This is Thank You Mama weekly lessons from mothers all around the world. Hello and welcome to another episode of Thank You Mama. My name is Anna Teider. My guest today is Courtney Bryant. Courtney is originally from Houston, Texas, and Courtney is an actor, a screenwriter, self-love and embodiment coach. Courtney is going to tell us more about this in a minute, but I just wanted to say I have a feeling today our episode is going to be a lot about boundaries, isn't it?
Yes.
Setting boundaries. Hi, Courtney, and welcome.
Thank you so much, Miss Anna, for inviting me on your podcast and giving me the opportunity to share my light and all of the things that I do with your community. I've had an opportunity to listen to some of your episodes, and it's truly put me to sleep at night. So it's one of the things that I love hearing before I go to bed now. Yes. So that seems like it's truly in alignment because, yes, I've definitely been craving and for what you've been putting out there. So that's awesome. And yeah, so I'll get into, myself. You gave such a wonderful introduction and pretty much sums it up because that's my whole life is acting, writing, screenwriting, and directing. And my newly found passion, which is self-love and embodiment. My background is mostly in psychology, which is pretty much how everything started. I have 2 degrees in psychology. So since I was a little girl, you can ask my father, who's a serial entrepreneur himself and multi-passionate. I just had this dream of helping people in life. I had a life wellness center as a kid. That was my playtime. So, and I left from doing psychology and I entered into what I call my corporate slave job, which was an extension agent teaching a bunch of classes from Tai Chi to marriage, relationships, and everything. And then I was corporately expelled, or what we like to call fired, which helped me transition into online business. And from there, I really found out that I wasn't in love with myself as much as I thought. And so not seeing the results in my business really sent me into a lot of cycles of self-sabotage, self-hatred, and all of these things. And it really wasn't until I decided to dive into and immerse myself into my spiritual journey that I was able to become the blossoming flower, the goddess, the awakened rebel, as I call it, that you see today. And so that's what led me here. And I know that you and I have spoken before. And one of the biggest things in my life that really helped me in this transformation, especially that led me to being a self-love and embodiment coach, were really boundaries and establishing those boundaries in my life with not only with just personal relationships, but also boundaries in my work and life balance. And I find that that's really where my clients a lot of the time struggle is boundaries. And I even recently had to pat or spank myself on the hand for not sticking to my boundaries and entering into what I call people pleasing. So yes, that's kind of a little bit of my background.
Wow.
Sorry, I know it's long-winded.
Courtney, I have 2 questions. What exactly is embodiment?
So, yes, I love this. So embodiment it's the feeling and the act of being. And so it's that whole word of being, that being of the CEO. And so I kind of like in layman terms, it's the talk it and walk it. So a lot of times we say, I love myself, I'm empowered. But do you feel these things? Are these the things that you show? Do we see these things in your energy? And so it's the act of being. Embodiment is the act of being of all of those things that you encompass or that you want to encompass.
And another one, here is something I found in your biography, and I'm like, Courtney, you have to tell me more about this, about pussy and soul alignment.
Yes, that has got to be like now my
Is that your trademark?
everyone's favorite. Yes, my trademark now. Yes, it's pussy and soul alignment. So, under my self-love and embodiment, I really go from 4 values. So, my mission, I feel like in life, is to help individuals heal, CEOs, entrepreneurs, and creatives, whoever it may be, heal from anxiety and depression by radically falling in love with themselves, stepping into their revel in manifestation. And that's what I do. I love doing that and guiding them towards pussy and soul alignment. And it really stems from, like I said, 4 values of self-love, which is 1, that's the primary portal. And from there opens the portal to self-power, self-worth, and self-pleasure, which is where pussy and soul alignment comes from. It comes from self-pleasure, because when you are truly aligned from mind, body, soul, and spirit, your body is meant to experience pleasure in all forms or capacities. And so it's really learning about how to manifest abundance and from a place of pleasure and from your pussy, and owning that power. And so many people are so afraid to tap into it, and just giving it that name allows people to grab hold of their power, because so many people are even afraid to say the word pussy.
They are,
but but it has a lot of power. And when you tap into your pussy, you're able to get into that orgasmic flow where you are able to attract and manifest every single thing that you desire. And it's getting my queens awakened to that point to where they can meet those things together and unleash a goddess power.
I love that. Thank you for helping.
Yes.
Courtney, I forgot to ask you 2 things. Do you have children?
No, I do not have children. I am a serial auntie, you all. Yes, I'm a serial auntie. I literally have 5 godsons.
Oh,
5. They're all boys.
That's mad. And then I wanted to jump into your mom. I wanted you to tell us a little bit about your mom. And normally I know mom's name because we spoke before, and I don't have your mom's name. I missed it.
It's so crazy that you say that, because I've done African divinations, and the guy that's over your African divinations is called your Oboluaye, and he always forgets my mom's name. He's like, I'm not sure, but your mom's name is like a flood. It's like it come and go. So it's so crazy that you say that, because my mom, yes, it's like my mom's name is like in the wind kind of thing, but her name is Shondra.
Shondra. Okay. Tell us about Mama Shondra.
Yeah. And so many people have a lot of stories and histories with their mother, but I wanted to add in the fact that I did not start living with my mother until I was in high school. So I did not really get a chance to experience my mother until I was about the age of 15 or 16, because my dad and my mother had such a very strenuous relationship. And my dad kind of felt it was best for me not to be, or his views or his perspective or his truth was that I needed to be in a different environment away from my mom. So for me, I really yearned for my mom's presence, because my dad was very much so lived in his masculine energy, which is another thing, a part of pussy and soul alignment that we learn. We learn how to balance, how to really live in our feminine energy and to own it. And my dad, he really lived in a masculine energy, which really impacted me. He was very strict. very rural. He was just a very, what do we call it, authoritative in parenting styles. And so, like I said, I really yearned for my mom's emotional side. And when I met my mom was very passive aggressive.
So you never met her before you were 15?
I had, but we just didn't have that deep of a relationship. Like, I really wanted to be next to her, but the times that I saw her was just very quick. It's always like, I'd spend a day or two and it's like a weekend and then I come back. And then it really kind of disconnected me from my mom's family side because I was really, really close to them. Younger. And then as I grew up, they were always having family events and I wasn't there, or like I'd go there and then I'd be picked up. And then even in school, I switched schools, like 13 different schools.
Oh, wow.
My mom would pull me out and then she'd try to keep me, but then my dad would get me back and then he would keep me in a school and he'd take me out of that school. So I really, really struggle with instability. And that's really why I wanted boundaries or like instability the most. And I craved it. And so after like really moving, finally my dad gave me one thing, and this is why I love talking about self-power and things like that. He gave me the opportunity to choose my high school.
Okay.
And first decision he'd ever let me make because he had my whole life planned out. Lawyer, college, everything down to the T. And I felt so liberated. I was like, you're going to give me a choice? I can choose? And this is why it's so important to speak your own truth. And I finally chose the high school. And then I also was like, okay. And when I went to my mother's house, I was like, I decided I'm never going back.
So you chose the high school that's next to your mom. So you moved schools, but you also moved to your mom when you were 15.
Yes, 15. Yes. And me moving with my mom is a whole nother thing. I loved it because, like I said, I wanted that relationship with my mom, and I craved that emotional caregiver, that feminine energy that I had been missing for so long. And it in that formed a level of codependency. We became highly dependent upon each other. She became highly dependent upon me financially because I'm the oldest of two other younger girls. And so it was a real shift for me. And I really took that older sibling responsibility to heart. And I still do. And my mother, she struggled financially as a single parent, as, a lot of single moms do. And so I felt, and I think I told you this before, we have this little joke where she calls me her, and I call her, I say, I'm your daughter husband, because I really felt like I assumed the role of her husband in that case. I became her emotional provider, her go-to, like I said, not only financially, spiritually, mentally, like we were just so codependent.
And you helped practically with your sisters in the household. And
yes. And it really changed me. Because at that point, when you do things like that, you're no longer living for yourself. You're now living for someone else. And this is all at 16. And now, mind you, all of this is happening. And at the same time, my dad is still involved. And he goes to my Catholic school and he's like, well, she only has one class left. So they make me graduate early. So now I'm leaving this place and I'm leaving and going into college at 16. And so I'm still carrying in college. At this time, I'm 16. I'm still partly, to me, the head of the household, of my mother's household at this time. And so, like I said, in that, I truly lost myself because the only thing I could think about was the survival of my family and not the healing that needed to take place within myself from even before living with my mom. And then fast forward, my mom 2 years ago on New Year's experiences a stroke.
At a very young age.
Very, very young age. She's only 47. She had just turned like 48, I think, at that point. And the crazy part is, here's where another level of my spiritual journey gets disconnected, is because now I have this resentment because my mom was totally, for me, in my perspective, from my truth, as healthy as I could think someone could possibly be. She's not a smoker, never smoked a cigarette. She doesn't drink, never even had a tattoo, nothing. And she experienced a stroke, and it disconnected me even more spiritually because, and I was so withdrawn because, and full of resentment because, like I said, I'm still the head of the household. I haven't resolved my feelings around this situation. And now I'm put there even more to make life decisions medically. I had to figure out whether she should have another surgery. Should she go under anesthesia?
She was paralyzed. We didn't say that because a stroke can be a little stroke, but she had a very, very serious stroke.
She was paralyzed, yes, from all the way down on her left side. Yes. Paralyzed. And so it was such an overwhelming experience for me. And I knew that I still loved my mother and I was obligated to help her. And so that experience really, really, like I said, disconnected me spiritually from the source. I really, like I said, that resentment, it just sent me into a cycle. And I never really wanted to address it until I got into my business, that I figured out that I was never going to reach past my upper limits until I started this journey of healing. And I learned in that from my mom and that experience. She's now doing so much better. The only thing that's paralyzed is just her hand now. It's just her left arm. And so in that, I realized that her healing is not my healing. And I think that's important for us to know as children of mothers, is because sometimes we take on the burden of our mothers and we have to release that so that we can go on our own healing. And because people get this idea healing is linear, and it is not. It is varied for each one of us. And when you take on someone's healing, it interrupts the universe's ability to do its own work in your life. And you'll start to see, maybe you still enter into abundance, but it may be a blessing that is meant for your mom and not you. So yes, that has been the biggest lesson.
You told me when we spoke about this that you had this tough decision. You made that tough decision to move out, and people were judging you, as I can imagine. And you said, it's either her or me. I won't survive this. I will be a better help for her if I'm not with her 24/7.
Yes, that was probably, it almost brings me to tears now that I made that decision, and it was the hardest thing for me to do because, like I said, it's your mom.
Yeah.
It's your mom. You're like, I'm indebted to this person. We're connected. I owe her my life. And like I said, I have been living with my mom for those amount of years, and she kind of never really, she would always say, I'm okay if you leave, but sometimes you just know, you're like, okay, no, she still wants me to stay. And like I said, I knew that all of my family, they were like, no, you need to get a house for you, your sisters, your mom, all of you need to live together. And it would bring me to tears. And I was like, because I cannot live like this anymore. I cannot, I need to be independent. And I had to figure out what I needed to let go of. And I needed to release that codependency, that I could, release that and become independent and own my own life.
Wow, that's a big one. Courtney, we had a few more lessons that I wrote down. Do you want to tell me a few more? Do you need a reminder?
Just a little reminder.
So we spoke about forgiveness and how you learned to forgive God or universe or whomever you believe into.
I love that because that is, as like I said, my teachings in self-love. It starts with self-love, and people are always like, what is self-love? How do I get to self-love? And I always say the first piece is forgiveness, because all of these things are happening in our life. You have all these relationships, these circumstances, and all of these things that you've let happen, and they're overwhelming you. I've let all of this happen. I've let all of these people take control of my life. I've let all these things. And so when you take a step back and you close your eyes and you take 3 deep breaths and you put your hand over your heart and you begin to listen, the first piece starts with you. And I think the hardest part for people to move past is accepting the responsibility that they've had in what's happened so far that's gotten them to this point where they are right now, as we speak today. And people they're like, how did this happen? And they never want to take responsibility or accountability that we've manifested everything that's happened subconsciously. And that's where I started. I was like, I need to forgive myself for letting these things happen, for allowing these things to happen to myself.
But when we look at something like your mom's stroke, how do you deal with that? Whom do you forgive?
Yes. And so when we forgive ourselves, and so we're gonna say it's God, but it is you, because you are a God. You are the source. When you forgive God, you are forgiving you, because you are Him. You come from God. You're a whole connected source together. And so people think of it, some people say the universe, some people have it as the God, you have your crystals, but you are the infinite source. So when I say forgive God, that is forgiving you, because He made you. You are an extension of Him. If you think of God as a He or she. And so that part of forgiving God for all of the things that you have subconsciously manifested into your life up until this point. Because see, God and the universe have truly given you everything that you've asked for. I said I wanted a relationship with my mom. I got it. I never asked Him for a specific, I want this type of relationship. Everything I've got, I want a business. He gave me a business. But I never told him, okay, do you want an authentic business? Do you want to be in a business where you're unapologetically you? And so this is why I also tell people, you have to be specific. You have to be specific about what you want and what you desire. Because the universe is like a genie. It's going to give you everything that you ask for. You want a piece of paper? Sure. But you didn't tell me you want anything written on it. I want a husband. You didn't tell me you wanted a good husband.
But I have to tell you, I've learned there's always a trick. No matter how specific you are, you're like, whatever, I have no idea. I want a house in the woods. Then you will get a house in the woods, but you'll have, a racing track next to it. It's very hard.
Yes.
This being specific it's tricky. It's very tricky.
It is. It's a navigation. So you really have to, and this is why I also say you really have to dig deep into your practices, which is a lot about my embodiment, because that I speak about in embodiment, because when you dive deep into your meditation in your journal, you become the energetic match for this, for being specific, what you're asking for, that desire, because that's how you transmute it. Sometimes we say things and we're like, we're specific, but to become an energetic match, to really zone in on something, it takes time, patience, and you really have to be there. But what you want, what you truly desire, will come to pass.
And I've learned that you should desire the feeling more than the specific thing. You should desire
Yes.
how you feel in the house. So you should not desire a house that's in the woods, but you should desire a house where you feel perfectly happy. And then there won't be a racing track next to it.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yes.
Courtney, thank you so much. Do we have more that you think you've learned from your mom or your relationship with her?
Yes, like I said, what we talked about before, the very first thing is establishing boundaries. So once you forgive yourself, you have to figure, now you're like, okay, this is my clean slate. That forgiveness. This gives me a clean slate to move forward, and you're there. But that clean slate does nothing for you if you don't have any tools in place to keep that state going forward, which is why boundaries are my favorite thing, because I had forgiven myself and forgiven God for this circumstance and this situation that had happened to my family. And so it was like, okay, well, Courtney, how now do you best move forward with this? Mm-hmm. Because you can't stay here. Mm-hmm. You can't stay in this space. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I love my mom. And this became my boundary, setting up my sacred space, my looking at my time. And this is not just in your business. And this is what people get sidetracked on. They think these are just boundaries I have in my business. But these are also boundaries you should have in your personal life.
You should. If you're a mother or a wife, yeah.
Right. And like I said, it also, I love, like I said, the values that I teach, because it goes hand in hand with self-power, being able to speak your truth. So now when my mom calls, there are some times when I say, no, Mom, I cannot do that. I can do this, but I can't do that because I have to protect my energy. And putting those boundaries in place, it's actually an awakening for the energy of them to see that they need to put boundaries in place for themselves.
Yep.
And so that's what something else that I've learned is that, because people stop at forgiveness, like, okay, I've forgiven everybody. I've forgiven myself. I've forgiven my ex. I've forgiven this person. But how do you move forward? How do you take that forgiveness and move it and shift you all's energy and relationship into the next level? So you now need boundaries in place with like I said, with your intimacy, with your partner. Hey, this is me speaking my truth. This is what I need from you. And if I can't get it, then, we need to talk about, this situation, because these are my needs and they need to be met. Because like I said at the beginning, you are designed for pleasure. You're designed to experience pleasure. I mean, there are times we're going to experience pain and different emotions. We were designed as our bodies are vessels. We are vessels, and we were designed to be able to handle those emotions. But it's all, again, about balance. And how do you create balance? Sometimes some energies come in to destroy that balance because they don't have any other energy to attach to. And how do you protect that energy? Boundaries.
Yay. Thank you, Courtney. We started with boundaries. Do we want to end with boundaries?
Yes, I love boundaries.
Great.
Yes, those are my favorite things.
Okay, so I'm going to just quickly recap, and you already did. So we spoke about forgiveness, about forgiving God or universe or whoever. What helps me personally is forgiving my life. I'm like, life, I love you. This was tough. You put me through this challenge, but I still love you. We spoke about loving yourself, And about boundaries, the importance of boundaries as a step further from forgiveness.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes, I
Thank
love
you.
it.
Yeah,
Thank you
thank you for
so
being my
much.
guest and
Yes,
sharing your story.
thanks.
That's very
Thanks.
inspiring. Yeah.
Awesome.
If you enjoy Thank You Mama and want to help it grow, please take the 2 seconds to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps. If you'd like to get in touch, you can send me a mail at info@thankyouMama.net. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter under Anna Teider, that's Tajder. This was Thank You Mama. Come back next week, subscribe, and tell your friends.